So the highly unbiased and fair New York Times put out a hit piece on the American people, saying that white Republicans' support for Black Lives Matter tanked after George Floyd. I wonder why that is. Hello, my name is Kyle and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to share with you a New York Times article. Excuse me, sorry. Every time I say New York Times, I get a little sick. Oh. This New York Times article concerning the population's handling or view of the Marxist group, Black Lives Matter. Might I say, the self-admitted Marxist group, Black Lives Matter. Here, I gotta get to this quickly. I just can't take this. So, this article in the New York Times is part of a special section on the George Floyd and America a year after his death. Read more for whatever. It says here, the moment was called a racial reckoning. Of course. Multiracial crowds of protesters took to the streets to call for racial justice. All right. So let's get into some of these numbers here. And I highlight some stuff here. So this here is a timeline of support based on Black Lives Matter. So right here to the left, this orange here, this is going to be somewhere, I don't know, before Breonna Taylor, before March 3rd. So the support for Black Lives Matter had dropped since last summer. And so we had the March 13th death of Breonna Taylor, the May 5th case of Ahmaud Arbery. And by the way, I'm going to not talk about these individual cases because we don't have the time to get into those. We'll just take them for what they are. May 25th, George Floyd. And then June 1st, they put, of course, Trump at the height of this, that Trump threatens to deploy the military to quell protests. At that point, it looks like the support for Black Lives Matter goes down. And like you saw in the introduction, I have no idea how that possibly could have happened. But you would think that the New York Times would be fair and honest in their assessment, because you would think that they would say, you know what? Maybe it's because they're Marxist, and maybe it's because of all the rioting. I'm gonna get into why I think people got into this and why they started to support Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna do that. Let's look here though. Go up here at the top of the screen here. All right, let's look at this. We're gonna do a find and see if we can see if there's anything in here dealing with riots. Oh, that would be no. So nowhere in this article do they mention riots. They mention protests, but they also don't mention, they actually mention burn, B-U-R-N. Any burn? No burn. How about Marxist? All right. No Marxist. Okay. So there you have it. So there's no burn, no riot, and no Marxist in this article at all. And they're wondering why support for Black Lives Matter went down. Well, there's your hint. So here, let's come down here. It says here that after Mr. Floyd's death, Republicans, of course Republicans, reported much stronger support for Black Lives Matter than they had earlier in 2020. For a party often characterized by its racial insensitivity, oh yeah, they're really objective, and antagonism toward racial minorities. Again, you know, this article is just full of lies and hatred. This increase in support was striking. Oh yeah. How dare those white Republicans have any kind of empathy or support for Black Lives Matter? But perhaps even more striking is this rapid decline. Okay, but you know what? You also omitted the words burn, riot, and Marxists. Okay? You know, how about also blocking streets or disobedience or attacking Trump supporters? Or how about that? I bet you none of that's in there, because during that whole process, that's what you saw. And I'm gonna get right to the chase. You know, here's the reason, and here's your thing here. So basically, the Democrats kept going up And even theirs tapered off to the support of Black Lives Matter. So it's tapering on the downward trend. Even Democrats are seeing this. Not as much, of course. Republicans here dropped significantly and still going down a downward trend. And maybe it was before they were not so supportive of Black Lives Matter, because again, they were self-admitted Marxists. That they had an agenda to get rid of the nuclear family. Republicans, by and large, like their families. They like mom and dad being in the home. They support that. Okay? And if you don't have that, that's fine. But they also support people who have nuclear families. And so that's maybe why it was that way before. So why did it spike to its highest point here? Because Republicans actually do care about Black people. Ding, 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 ding. They do. They respect Black people. They do. They respect them enough to tell them the truth. Say, hey, you can do it. You're not a victim. You can be whatever you want to be. God created you. You can aspire to be anything you want to be. And if you want to do that, I don't know any Republican that wouldn't help that person if they wanted to reach out and say, I'm doing what I can. Can I get some help? That's the Republican Party. The Republican Party is the only party, the only group of people who are looking to save the unborn children in the Black communities. We're the only people looking to the community to say, hey, what's going on with the murder rate with Black on Black crime? I don't see Democrats marching over that at all. And that's the reason why this thing went up, because Republicans, white Republicans, felt bad. They said, you know what, this is something that needs to be done. Whether you believe George Floyd was the situation you believe, what side you're on, didn't matter. The footage was striking in America, the footage of him being on the ground. Now, we know much more now, but at the time, sympathy absolutely went up. But guess what happened? Black Lives Matters burned the country to the ground. There was murders left and right, and then the visceral anger coming out of them was palatable. That's why the support went down. It was because of what happened after the fact. But here it says, white people are less supportive of Black Lives Matter than they were in the beginning of 2020. Probably, again, for the reasons I mentioned. You have, Republicans came up, they spiked here, spiked up here and came down. You have others also trending down. You have, I think this is Hispanic or Latino. Theirs spiked even higher, and theirs are trending down. So it's not, look, New York Times, it's not just white people, it's everybody. Even Black people are trending down on Black Lives Matter. Everyone sees what they're doing, especially now with this $3.4 million spending spree with the money. You want to mention Breonna Taylor? Well, you do realize that she blasted the local BLM chapter where she lives, because she called them, well, I don't remember the exact phrase, but she blasted them for being hypocrites, essentially. So this is what you're saying. And this article is so dishonest. It is so dishonest. In both cases, the deterioration in support is noteworthy because we do not merely observe a return to pre-Floyd opinion levels. Rather, since last summer, Republicans and white people have actually become less supportive of Black Lives Matter than they were before the death of George Floyd, a trend that seems unlikely to reverse anytime soon. You know why? Because they weren't burning down cities before George Floyd. It went up because people were sympathetic. People have a heart. People care. They grieved. I know many church families that fell apart because of this. White Republican families, white Republican churches, by and large, split over this thing here. One side would say, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. And the other side would say, you're just being a racist. We don't need you in our church. We don't need you even in our family. I have seen that as well. Because people genuinely care of the situation. And they misconstrued one person's side of it versus the other, when both sides cared. But one was looking at it from a pragmatic, realistic aspect, especially when you saw what was happening prior to George Floyd, with them saying that they are a Marxist organization that wants to refashion this country. They want to get rid of the nuclear family. That's coming from BLM. And those people who were not in favor of it after George Floyd were the ones who saw it before George Floyd. The ones who embraced it didn't have any opinion at all. They just saw it, reacted emotionally, and then didn't want to agree with them because they didn't want to be labeled as a racist. We have videos on that about the white woke Christians in this country, and also white liberal guilt as well. We did a video on that as well. I'll link both below. Check this out. Explains everything. And that was done during the time all this was going on. All right. So anyway, it comes out here again. We're going to conflate some more stuff. So here, talk about here, President Trump here says, declared an memorable saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Okay. Perhaps this coincidental phrase finds its roots in the racial unrest in the 60s. Well, of course, they didn't want to talk about their Democratic mayor, Daley, who basically said the same thing. If you loot, I'm going to shoot. Okay. What Trump is saying here is when you start looting, there's going to be shooting, period. Whether it be from the cops or whether it be from people trying to protect private property or from the looters themselves. That's all he's saying. They're inferring what they want to drive a narrative. That's all they're doing. All right. Then they try and draw comparisons to the 60s, which again, Mayor Daley did the same thing. Okay. Said the same thing. And guess what happened? There were no riots there either. It says here that when Black Americans took to the streets of American cities to demand a redress of grievances, white support for the civil rights movement declined. Well, I'm going to take that for what it is. Maybe that's also why Martin Luther King wanted a peaceful movement, why he wanted to be a non-violent movement, because Martin Luther King Jr. knew that once you start bringing guns in the equation and violence, you're going to lose support. He knew that. He wanted to shame the people of the South who had a conscience to look at what Bull Connor was doing, what Governor Wallace was doing, what all these governors and mayors in the Deep South who are racist, who are all Democrat, by the way, were doing to shame them, to see and put a light on the problems that were happening in that particular movement. Once you go violent, you're going to lose support. That is why King and Gandhi before him chose the nonviolent route. Because if you want to change public opinion, that's the way to do it. All right. And down here at the end here it says, here and elsewhere, scholars have considered the parallels between the summer of 2020 and the tumultuous summers of the 60s. The 1960s represented a watershed moment for race, in part because of the important shifts in American public opinion. But the lasting legacy of the era is found in its trademark legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, rather than changing hearts and minds. Which, by the way, it was drafted by Republicans, pushed for by Republicans, and voted on by Republicans, by and large. Now, we do know that a Democrat president voted for it, but he's also the same guy who used the N-word on a daily basis. And so, yeah, let's just call it the way it is. LBJ was a racist. LBJ's war on poverty did more to destroy the Black community than anything I can think about for the past 70 years. No doubt. Some have wondered whether support for BLM, especially among white people, is genuine or merely virtue signaling. As volatility of the polling suggests, there is reason to be skeptical. This conversation, however, misrepresents racism as a social problem rooted in individual values rather than as a system forcefully sustained by our institutions. In our opinion, a more fruitful conversation would consider how to transform support for BLM, whether and how tenuous it exists, into more enduring political change. Whether or not this effort will involve substantial numbers of white Americans remains to be seen. This guy here, he's horrible. This guy here is horrible. He is inferring so much in here. First of all, he's inferring that BLM is a healthy organization. It is not. It's a racist, Marxist organization hell-bent on destroying the very fabrics of what this country was built on. Period. It's based on Karl Marx, separating and dividing, classifying white people in the power base as the enemy and Black people as perpetual victims who can always turn to the white man as his source or her source of grievance and frustration and anger. That is what BLM is all about. They are based on a Marxist philosophy system, anti-God, anti-Christian, and anti-American. That's BLM. Here it says, it generally are merely virtue signaling. Well, maybe yes. Maybe there were some that were doing that. I would say that most of those are probably your Democrats and your liberals. the ones who come in and act like they own the neighborhood. They go in, tear the neighborhood down, and these people from Antifa come in, burn the city down, and go back to their suburbs. And you saw the video footage of black people in the street saying, enough's enough. Why are you coming here, destroying our town, our city, and leave? You know, copying civil rights for your particular anti-American philosophy. That's all it is. They're copying the civil rights movement. They're copying the griefs. They're copying the pain of black people and Latinos and Hispanics for their own political gain. That's all is happening here. This is here, in our opinion, more fruitful conversation would be to consider how to transform support for BLM. Why? Now, if you want to say Black Lives Matter, then we can all agree with that, because Black lives do matter. That's why I talk about the millions of black kids that are being killed in the womb on behest of Planned Parenthood, which was founded by Margaret Sanger, who we know about her. She was a eugenicist. We know about Margaret Sanger. She was all about killing off the black race. We know about that. She founded Planned Parenthood. The start of that project was called the Negro Project. Go look that up. In fact, go look at the book called The Negro Project about Margaret Sanger. Check it out. So why would we go back to that? But Black Lives Matter, yeah, sure, we all agree with Black Lives Matter, which is why we talk about black and black crime. We care about that. But not the organization, not taking language that means nothing and putting it out there as if it's true. It's not. It's a facade. It's a facade. Wherever and how tenuously it exists. Whether or not this effort will involve substantial numbers of white Americans remains to be seen. That last sentence is another dig on Americans. If you guys could ever stop being racist, maybe we can become better. That's what it's saying. And this whole article is based on such misinformation. And I bet you no one's talking about this at all. It is an opinion piece. And again, it's got a lot of built-in assumptions. And it's just wrong all the way across the board. I had to call it out. This is not going to be a popular video, but I wanted to put this out there because I want people to have something to point to if they want to share it with someone else to kind of debunk this kind of narrative. This is what the left's doing. It's horrible. So that we think about this, we think about this article in the New York Times. I know it's horrible. It was hard for me to get through it. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this and how they're trying to rewrite history and trying to have built-in assumptions and try to just mischaracterize just about everything in a way that if you're not intelligent enough or if you're not knowledgeable enough to see what's going on, you can fall right for this. So let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to know what you think. And if you like what we do in this channel, we take pop culture and politics and filter to you in a conservative manner. In other words, filtering to you right. And please click the like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. And if you want to find out how to support this channel, there's a join button there that you can click to find out how to do that. As always, please check out some content that we have right here.